What's going on, everybody? Let's Talk Jets Radio, Part 4 training camp preview, talking wide receivers, a group that is fascinating to get into depending on who you talk to. Some people think the world of this group. Some people, myself included, have a lot of questions beyond Garrett Wilson, with Mike Williams coming off his injury, with some questions about Lazard. What do you expect out of Malik Corley as a rookie early in training camp? Does he need some time? So a lot of questions about this group. But I think you have to start with Garrett and what he's ultimately going to do for the entire offense. Another guy that's just been victimized, probably the more so than any other guy on this roster. Garrett Wilson has suffered because of what the Jets have going on at quarterback. I still remember that speech at the end of last year of just how much this season affected him, how it was the worst year of his life. I think Garrett Wilson's a different breed, just as far as his mental approach, how he thinks about the game. He's a true leader and a winner, and I look forward to him being a Jet for life. I really hope that happens, but it all starts with winning this year and allowing him the opportunity to be that guy that we expect him to become, because I think he knows that if he was almost anywhere else with better coaching, better system, better quarterback, that his numbers would be on pace to be looking at a mega contract in another year or two. Now, he still has that ability, I think, to produce that, but ultimately it depends on Aaron Rodgers being out there healthy for a full 16, 17 games. And if that does happen, just based on what we saw in training camp last year, what we've seen from Garrett Wilson without any stability at the quarterback position, I think this could be a 120-plus type year for Garrett, whether you try to double-team him or not, which I think is going to be difficult to do. You could try to put two guys on him, but Conklin is still effective over the middle. I think Mike Williams could still stretch the field as long as he's healthy. And then obviously Breece Hall with everything he could do. I still think, like I've been saying, I think the Jets want to be a ground and pound first team that runs the football, but Breece is kind of multifaceted with what he could do with the rock in his hands as a runner and then also as a receiver. So, you have plenty of different elements and different ways to beat defenses, and that's why I think Mike Williams is so crucial. If he's healthy, we know what he could do: yards per catch, stretching the field, a big body that can get after it as a block or two, which is going to help Breece Hall to bust those long ones. But then also Malik Corley, I like this move personally because I think he fits the offense. I think he complements what they have well. Again, everything is predicated on health. And also in his case, you could say maybe a little bit more emphasis on coaching as far as being able to scheme him open with different designs that put the ball in his hands right away, the quick screens. His game, just based on the college tape, what's going to translate over is putting the ball in his hands and allowing him to do his thing after the catch. And you have a roster that has plenty of guys that can get downfield, that can get to that next level and block. So I think he fits and complements everybody well. It's just a matter of the adjustment period, how quickly does it click for him as far as the playbook, and also just matching the physicality of what he's going up against in games on the defensive side of the ball. And we've seen, and you wonder if Saleh changes this approach, where Denzel Mims, Elijah Moore, they obviously have had some issues. I know with Mims, it seemed like it was a big thing that they forced him to learn every single position at wide receiver instead of just allowing him to do the one thing that he does well, which is play on the outside and stretch the field. They wanted him to learn the X, Y, and Z, and he struggled with it. So you hope from Malik Corley's standpoint, I know it's a different offense, different coordinator, but you hope for Malik Corley's sake that the Jets do allow him to be in the best position to succeed as a rookie and not try to force him to do too much too soon. And I think they have the guys to allow that to happen. You do have the guy in Mike Williams, again, if he's healthy, if he's back to what we've seen the last couple years with the Chargers. That's a guy that's going to make a big impact on this offense. So everything's predicated on health, especially with this group. Not just them, but also the quarterback being out there for a full number of games. So the top three, and I shouldn't say that. Those probably are your top three by the end of the season. I do think Xavier Gipson could see a lot of work in the slot early in the year, just based on his experience last year. He did some good things. Somebody that I think they're probably going to give a look to early on in training camp and almost force Malik Corley to win the job and take it from somebody that was at least here before him. You have Jason Brownlee as well, who I think can contribute a little bit on the outside if Mike Williams isn't 100% early in camp, or if it takes him a little bit longer to get ready. But the big question becomes about Allen Lazard, and where is his place on this roster? I mentioned 5 receivers already. You also have Irv Charles. We know what he brings on special teams. You don't have Justin Hardy this year, so you figure he's going to have a roster spot. So do you keep ultimately 7 receivers? Or, does Jason Brownlee possibly get kicked out? If Corley looks great, do you need Gipson still? A lot of questions about this group on the back end, but Lazard is the guy that's just frustrating because of the contract, because of what we didn't see last year. There were drops, there were penalties. You can blame the quarterback again, you can blame the offense, you can blame a lot of different things, but I think, him probably more than anybody was just relatively ineffective. I mean, he wasn't getting separation, just wasn't catching balls that were thrown his way, penalties that killed some big plays, especially that Eagles game, which I think was a shitty call anyway, but just you want to see a lot more from him, considering he's supposed to know the offense, and now with Rodgers coming back, they're supposed to have this chemistry together. I would hope that Rodgers ultimately stays out of this decision, as far as if you're at a certain point in training camp where it's just not clicking. And apparently that was going on in minicamp, that was going on in OTAs. They were struggling getting on the same page. There were miscommunications and drops. If all of that's continuing a couple weeks into training camp, there's more than enough guys out there that you can find opportunities for. The Jets should not feel like they have to give these opportunities to Lazard just because he got the contract. To me, he's still in the same boat as a Brownlee, as Gipson, as, you want to say Malik Taylor. He had a great preseason last year. He's in the same boat as all those guys. And if ultimately he's the best option to be your 5 or your 6 or whatever it is, then fine. But if other guys outperform him, or just as an entire group, there's a little bit more left to be desired, you go out and get somebody, because this season is too important. And for the moves that they did make, which I like, they still have some questions. It's not like they got their receiver at 10. They waited until a little bit later on. Getting somebody that, like I said, I think fits the offense, he should have a role, but somebody that's not your guaranteed, locked-in, day-one performer. And with Mike Williams, with his questions, as a group, you could be one injury away from some trouble. And so that's what you worry about a little bit. But ultimately, like I've been saying, which is something that I think is going to help this group, the fact that you want to be a ground and pound first team, that I think you're going to look to give Ruckert plenty of opportunities as well at tight end, lots of 2 tight end sets. I think that's going to allow you to succeed with primarily 3 receivers that are out there a majority of the time. You'll probably have some sets where, and one thing I would like to say also that I would love to see happen, I don't know if it will, at least early on in camp, and who knows if he gets signed elsewhere, but Corey Davis is still a guy that I think makes too much sense, as long as they didn't part on bad terms. I don't know what the exact reason was for him choosing not to play last year, if he just needed a break from the Jets, or if it was just something personal, if he just didn't want to play football anymore. And then obviously, the Jets weren't going to pay him his original contract to come back, so the fact that they had to release him, they couldn't work out, some kind of deal. You wonder if there's any animosity, or if he's just looking for a fresh start, or if he is welcome to a return, if the Jets would also want him back. And it's hard to imagine that they wouldn't, just considering that he was here all of training camp last year. He would know the offense to some degree. He knows Rodgers to some degree. And he's also the same kind of prototype, I know I keep saying this, as Mike Williams, as bigger receivers that block, that are physical, that stretch the field. So if Mike Williams isn't ready, or if he goes down for any period of time, you have somebody that has that experience that you can plug in there. So I just think that move makes too much sense for it not to happen. Again, I don't know all the particulars behind the scenes of what went on, but as long as there's no bad blood or any animosity, I think that's a move that just makes too much sense. But I do think that guys like Brownlee, Malik Taylor, Allen Lazard, obviously because of the guaranteed contract, they're all going to get the looks the first 2 or 3 weeks in training camp, and probably the first preseason game as well. And if ultimately the showings aren't great, or the Jets feel like they just need to make a move, then I expect and I hope that they would try to either trade for somebody. I know every year it seems like there's always 1 or 2 receivers that end up getting traded. You could still see Ayuk possibly get dealt. So you just wonder how the market's going to shape out, and if the Jets feel they need to strike, are they in position to do that contractually? So a lot of stuff to watch play out, but definitely spotlight on Allen Lazard, and I think also a very big spotlight in a good way on Garrett Wilson, expecting just a breakout year. So hope you guys enjoyed. Talk to you later.